The bewitching hour. It's time to start. So again, hello, my name is John. I'm coming to you from my very messy workshop. Let me show you the room. I tidied up a little bit. In Cincinnati, Ohio, so just above the Ohio River. Um, I have had the Laserbox for a couple of years now. One of my favorite things to do with it is acrylic. I do a lot of building, so if you see my profile picture on Facebook, it's me and this giant lending library that's as tall as my kids were at the time. And I did that with the laser box, and the windows and a lot of those other clear details are acrylic. And so I love using acrylic. And so we're going to go through some tips and tricks. Feel free in the comments to ask any questions you have, or if there's clarification. Again, it might feel a little jerky because I'm about 15 seconds ahead of you, so I will get to you. Thank you to Sarah and to xTool and to my lovely wife Jennifer for monitoring the comments, so I can focus on this. So without further ado, here we go. So first off, not all acrylic is created equal. So there's two major types of acrylic. There's cast acrylic and extruded acrylic. So cast acrylic is, the plastic set out and then it's cast. So if you think about, like clay or concrete or something like that, it's cast. Oh, somebody just messed with the document. Sorry about that. So cast acrylic. The other type of acrylic is extruded acrylic, which extruded is pulling. So it's pulling the plastic out. So you would think about it with like extrusion for like 3D printing and stuff like that. It's made in a different way, and it's a lot harder to cut. So if you ever see a listing, make sure it says cast acrylic. Sometimes they'll call it plexiglass. Just make sure that it's acrylic. Other types of plastics, unless it says laser bowl, it's usually not laser bowl. So choose cast acrylic. Also, in cast acrylic, there's lots of different varieties. So there's mirror acrylic, glitter acrylic. So here's some mirror acrylic with some insets. Glitter acrylic. Which we have here. It's got some metal actually inlay in it. And then there's, pattern acrylic, which depending on how it's created, it might have a pattern that's on the surface or a pattern that's been dyed. So depending on that, the layers of coloring could show up differently. There's two-tone ones where you engrave into it, reveal a different color. So choose cast acrylic, and your settings might vary depending on the kind of acrylic that you have. So I find that my glitter acrylic is just a tiny bit harder to cut. And then preparing the acrylic for the laser. So when to mask and not mask. I personally unmask the top always. There's different kinds of masking. So for example, this xTool acrylic has a plastic masking. It's a little hard to see, but it's got a plastic covering. Some mirror acrylics will have either a front or back. So this is a blue masking, plastic masking, and then the front of the acrylic has another plastic masking. Whenever I'm doing acrylic, I remove the top masking, and if it's plastic, I remove both. If it's paper masking, which is what I dropped on the ground, if it's paper masking, I tend to leave it on. Paper cuts fine and doesn't have the same issues of plastic melting or deforming your edges. And let me grab that. There we go. Alright, and then this is the paper masking, which again, I cut this with no problem, leaving the masking on both sides. So when to add masking, so if you're going to be doing painting, sometimes it's easier to either add your own mask. So I have this heavy duty, ginormous masking, so I can add masking. So if I want to engrave through and do some complicated painting, I mask. I found recently a new way of doing painting, and so for example with this is a really deep engrave, and then I took paint and I sort of squeegeed it across the surface, and that way it went into, let me change camera so you can see up close. Alright, it went into those little cracks, but did not get on the surface. And the great thing with the surface of acrylic is that you can just wipe paint off. So when to mask, when not to mask. I almost always remove plastic masking. If it's going to go on the laser, remove the plastic masking. Another tip or trick is if you're removing both the masking and you're worried about the honeycomb scratching, you can put damp paper towel underneath it, and so that way when it's cutting, the bottom of your acrylic isn't going to get scratched. Like my honeycomb is a rough place, and so to make sure it's not scratched, you can put something underneath it. All right, do I use acrylic paint? So yes, I use acrylic paint. It's cheap, it's simple. If you're going to be doing anything that needs to be waterproof, that needs to have a greater survivability, you're going to need to seal it. So depending on what you're looking for, just a clear spray sealant. Most of what I'm doing isn't going to be out in the elements, so if it's in the crevices, I don't tend to seal it. I like the shine feel to it. Yeah, and you can wash with soapy water to get stuff off. So how do you eliminate dust residue? So it depends what you're doing. The dust is worse. The dust can get pretty bad if you're doing multiple passes. Soapy water, like Camille had said. You can also, depending on what your material is, if you've painted or something, it can get a little more challenging. When I've done some intricate things where I can't just wash it off with soap, you can use a Q-tip and something, I wouldn't use acetone, but maybe isopropyl alcohol to clear that away. Something also that comes to mind, I don't know that I have one in here, is when you're gluing acrylic layers together, it's important to choose your glue well. We found out, we were doing a craft show, and we found out that some glues, if they get on the edge of the acrylic, will actually fracture it. So, during engraving, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe you can add some more clarity. All right, so, okay. Also, hearing the popping. So this is something, my machine's broken, I don't know what's going on, I'm hearing a popping noise. How acrylic is cut is it's vaporized. So the laser power comes down, it melts and boils the plastic away. That's where the dust comes from. And underneath there's the honeycomb, which has, the spaces for the beam to go through. But as it's vaporizing, some of that vapor gets caught underneath. And so if you're doing multiple passes or if there's another pass nearby, it can light that vapor on fire and it does a popping noise. So that's also why it's good to have a wet paper towel underneath it. You can also prop up your material, so adding a spacer or a magnet so that that vapor is allowed to dissipate. It's allowed to get out of there. Just if you're going to change your, excuse me, if you're going to change your material thickness by propping it up, just make sure you change your settings so that it accounts for that so you don't have a head strike. All right, coat acrylic with dish soap and then cut it. Yep, yep, Camille, that's a great tip. A thin coating of dish soap, and then you can cut it. It'll reduce the dust, especially if you're just doing one pass. Some of the stuff I do is multiple passes, but yes, don't use alcohol. Okay, so don't drink. Yeah. Okay, what glue do I recommend? So I've not found I've not had the best luck with glues. Depending on what I'm gluing it to, I've used everything from wood glue, if it's an inset and I'm attaching it to wood. I've used, the newest one that I'm trying is, I'll grab it. I don't know the name of it offhand, but it's called Liquid Fusion. Let me switch cameras around. There we go. Liquid Fusion. This was specifically recommended for acrylic to acrylic bonding. I can tell from experience to not use crazy glue, especially if it's clear. The setup time is fast and the fingerprints are awful. So, all right. So dealing with fumes. This is probably the first thing that most people encounter with acrylic. Is it stinks. Such and such doesn't want me to have a laser, because of all the fumes. So a couple of things help with fumes. So one, like Camille said, the less dust you have flying around, the less that's going to get into the air. So that layer will help you out a little bit. That if you're doing cutting, I have an inline fan that's a 6-inch inline fan to remove as much of that as quickly as possible, just to get really good airflow. Some people use filters. I found that the largest airflow is the fastest way to get it out. And also, it's sort of like the microwave ding. You want to get it, but it's hot. Leave acrylic in there a little bit. So let some of that dissipate. You might even move it a little bit and then close it down, because some of those pockets under the honeycomb. And then, if you're doing something massive, give it time to, excuse me, give it time to off gas. So like if you're doing something and somebody's really sensitive to acrylic smell, give the pieces time to, to off gas out of your living situation. All right. Not seeing any other new questions. So, okay. So engraving and painting, engraving and coloring. Okay. So, I think I already showed. So my son is super into Pokemon, and so we made some really cool. It's called a Z-ring, but this is actually my daughter's, but made a My Little Pony one, and so you can take layers of acrylic. So there's 3 layers of acrylic, and I just use some bungee cord to make like a watch, and then in there is some tape. And so they can change out their gems. So with the My Little Ponies, she can change out her cutie mark of choice. But you can get some great detail filling in the paint. So this is one color but some of the other ones were 2 or 3 colors. Again, by putting the paint where you want it, just a damp washcloth or a squeegee to remove that surface, and you can get some really high contrast. With these, I did a pretty deep engrave, so I want to say it was like 60 power, 2 passes. So doing it twice got super deep, so that paint gets deep in there and stays in there when you wipe across the top. All right, engraving and coloring. Okay, inlay. All right, we will get there. So engraving, deep engraving, coloring, and again, that dust I clean after every time. So if I'm engraving acrylic, I clean it out. Microfiber towels are your friend. I got some LA's awesome stuff for the honeycomb, but definitely clean often when you're doing acrylic. All right, so now show and tell. I see Joe wanting show and tell. So let me grab the dragon. All right, so in preparation for this, I made a neat little acrylic dragon. And then let me show you. So here's just, 1,000 foot level view of design. So this was a free design off of a SVG site. And so I made a video about this, but basically what you need to do is break this up. I have a back panel, and then I have the sort of the grid part, the inlay part, and then the pieces, and I've divided by color that each one is going to be. And so the fastest way to do this, I'm going to duplicate, and this is Inkscape, is to do path, break apart. So now I have the background, and I have each of the pieces. So this background is going to be the back plate. So when I do inlay, I usually have a back plate. It could be wood or acrylic. I have a grid, which is sort of like the stained glass, where it keeps the pieces where they are going to be. And then I have the inlay part, which is this, which over here you can see that I've separated out. That's, there are other people that will, they'll use offsets, they'll use, different things to get an exact fit. This is sort of the quick and dirty, the glue's gonna hold it together, kind of thing. And then each of these I loaded in and cut separately. Excuse me, cut separately in the Laserbox. So let's see, fabric softener. Okay, inside the machine. Okay, so inline fan. Yep. So you can do things to mitigate the smell. Also clean out your inline fan. It does tend to get a little line up. So here's this. Another tip is using tape. So if I'm doing a complicated one, I'll put down a large piece of tape, and I'll put all the things together, the reverse side, and then I'll flip it over to put it on its backing. That just makes it easier to glue it all at once. But here's the little xTool Acrylic Dragon. Got the xTool green, and I love the mirror eyes and the 2 types of glitter acrylic. All right, let's see some other show and tell. So this is it's a little hard to see, but this is a a Pokemon Go ring that we just made out of acrylic for my son. Here's an ornament that again was a really simple design, just like I showed. Taking a stained glass SVG, deciding what pieces should be what color, and then cutting them out. And then with this one, it has a mirror backing. So it's a little, so you can see that there's the silver and then the blue mirror acrylic. You can also do neat things like ornaments. So this is the ornament that's my wife's design. And so it actually, so mirror acrylic, you're engraving it mirror side down, so you got to reverse it. And then what she did with this was she painted in the crack in the engraving that was then clear because the mirror coating was removed, and then we lasered a backing to cover that up. Something else that's cool to do you can make signs. So this is actually made to have a light behind it. So at craft fairs, I'm trying to hide my phone number from the internet, but at craft fairs you can make your own custom light and use the mirror acrylic to make your own custom light for your table. All right, let's check in to see if there are other questions. Let me see. All right. Do we have other questions? I'm now checking in on the chat. Liquid Fusion does acrylic to acrylic, correct. All right. So the results of the poll, we had 10 everything. We had 1 masking, 1 engraving, and nobody wants to cut acrylic. Who needs that cutting acrylic? All right. Let's see if there are other questions. So in the comments, what do you find yourself doing with acrylic most often? Is it ornaments? Is it what is your go-to acrylic creation? Go ahead and share that in the comments, and we'll see what everybody uses it most often for. All right. Yes. Wood to acrylic. All right. So what glue do I use for wood to acrylic? So if the frame is going to be wood or the backing is going to be wood, I use wood glue. If it's going to be something where it needs to stick together, I use tacky glue. I don't use tacky glue when it's clear. So tacky glue doesn't dry clear. So either wood glue or tacky glue would be my 2 glues of choice when combining wood to acrylic. And again, I use a frame. Have I tried spray glue? I have not tried spray glue. I know others have. I believe Ashley or Camille or some of the other experts have a backing, a peel away backing. Yeah, 3M sheets. That's it. Thanks, Camille. So it looks like people do sun catchers, ornaments. Let's see what else people do with acrylic. Keychains. Yeah, keychains are great. It's really durable. Cutting out names for signs. Yeah, a lot of people do. They use acrylic for nurseries. So you're making a nursery sign. It's less steps than cutting the wood and painting and all that. Cake toppers, exactly. Yeah, those are all awesome. I don't have it here, but I made a neat little light box that's mirror acrylic. And instead of painting the etching through, I put a candle in it, and so it was Mountain Dew themed. So it was fun that the yellow the yellow orange candle in the blue mirror acrylic came through Mountain Dew green, which was awesome. Social media signs, absolutely. Those are great options. Um, with some of the xTool, I call these wild colors. You can sort of see the. My son and I made a pretend Nintendo Wii, using this acrylic and EVA foam. That was another really cool thing. Is EVA foam, if you engrave it with enough power, it'll actually make an inlay where you can put a piece into it. So that's how we made our neat little pretend Nintendo Wii's. So is acrylic safe to use on cakes, or do you put a barrier from touching the cake? I have not used acrylic in conjunction with food. My guess is you would want to thoroughly wash it. Acrylic itself isn't toxic. It would be the dust you would want to make sure was completely free. I know a lot of people create them for cakes, so I assume that there's, you're not eating with the cake topper or biting on the cake topper, but making sure that dust is off of it. The acrylic itself is not, not hazardous. Yeah, Camille and Joe are right. Yeah, wash it thoroughly, and yeah, the acrylic itself is food safe. You just want to make sure that dust is off of it. We've got, excuse me, we got a couple more minutes. Are there other questions or comments? Do you all want to do another one of these? If so, either comment or leave, either comment or post in the group a topic you're interested in. Some topics have been raised way back when we did a small business live stream. So we had some people come in, talk about how they price what they make, their process, those kind of things. So if that's interesting to you, let us know. Or if there's a specific material, if you see something in the xTool store and say, I'd love to learn how to use this or that, definitely shout out to those that you have stayed to the end, the surprise. So my wife and I celebrate our anniversary, and we are big into MMORPGs. And so this is not the whole thing, this is just our beginning, but this is a great sword. And the cool thing is that we carved a channel. This is XPS foam from Home Depot, and we carved a channel in here, and we did acrylic paint, and then the glitter acrylic from xTool is translucent, so it's got the lighting effect, and you can see through it. Thanks. Yeah. So this will be a massive, great sword. I was hoping to get more done on it, but it's really cool. With your creativity and acrylic, you can make some pretty massive, awesome stuff. So shout out to my wife for the paint job, and then I figured out the acrylic part of this. So, as close to a lightsaber as I'm gonna get. All right, I think I saw another comment before I got distracted by the giant. Okay, never cut or any suggested settings. Okay, so depending on thickness, I think 6 millimeters for 100%, 90 to 100% power, 6 millimeters per second for 3 millimeter acrylic, and then for 6 millimeter acrylic, I think the speed goes down to 4, and the power stays up at like 80, and it's 2 passes. For the thick acrylic, it's important to do the 2 passes. Otherwise, if you try and do it at one, it'll melt instead of actually getting the next layer. But as I said in the beginning, if you go on the official webpage, there's a pinned community settings document. Please give your settings there, and you can see people's acrylic settings as well, and a lot of other settings as well. Yay for MMORPGs! All right, yeah, we'll need to see what I'm sure. I'm sure that my wife will not resist posting pictures when it is done. All right, well, our time together is up. I appreciate you all for coming and for being a great, a wonderful viewing audience. Again, thanks to xTool for supporting this and for supporting us making. If you have questions about specific acrylics, I can share those with you, and they're available on the xTool store. So thank you everybody for coming, and I will see you all next time, and please let us know what topics you're interested in. And as always, have fun lasering.